with you, Grenada, Caribbean, Martinique, the rest of the Eastern Caribbean. It is 4 minutes gone past the hour of 9 o'clock in the morning time. Welcome to today's edition of To The Point. For today, the 26th day of the month of March. Indeed, it's a pleasure being here with you. It's a wonderful good morning to all of our listeners. Those of you in Classic FM, that is Classic 105.5 and 105.9 on the FM band. And welcome back to our viewers on GBN's Channel 7, Channel 11, and Channel 20 if you are on cable. And certainly not missing those of you that's on social media, those on the World Wide Web, that's www.gbn.gd, or via our Facebook page. Thanks for being part of today's conversation here on To The Point. I'm Joseph Cadore. My guest this morning, a representative for the National Democratic Congress and a candidate for St. Andrews Northeast, Ms. Tessa Sincere. And certainly once the conversation starts, reminding you that you can be part of the conversation via our WhatsApp portal. You can submit your questions, queries, comments via that portal, or you can, once the line's open, 435-2041, or you can be part of the conversation via Facebook. Again, thanks for being part of the conversation. Good morning to you, Tessa Sincere. How are you?
Good morning. Thanks for having me. I'm doing great, thanks. Good morning to your viewers and listeners across platforms. Happy Tuesday.
Happy Tuesday to you, and I'm happy that you've agreed to be part of today's conversation. Tessa Sincere, I guess we continue to hear the conversation about the changing landscape of politics. And there's been a call for more women to enter politics. And you see the shift with women. They're moving from academia and they're moving into the world of politics. And some may I, why is it that a young, talented lady is going to shift from her profession and move into the world and arena of politics? Tell me why, Tessa. I would love to know.
Well, first of all, I do not see it as a shift necessarily. I see it as a sharing of my profession with politics. I am using my professional experience, knowledge, and bringing that into the political atmosphere, into the political field. I don't think they are necessarily distinct and separate, because politics is everywhere, albeit we're talking about partisan politics. But I don't see it necessarily as a shift. What I'm actually doing, as I said, is basically using my experience, my professional experience and knowledge, and bringing it into an atmosphere where we can use that knowledge and experience for nation building.
What experience do you speak of? Share with us, please.
Okay, so let me start. I have been a teacher for a very, very long time. I may not look like it, but I've taught for almost 20 years at the secondary school level. I taught modern languages, having studied Spanish, French, English at what was then the Grenada National College. I became a teacher, a modern language teacher at Grenville Secondary School. I was also a head of the modern language department at Grenville Secondary School. I was on the school management team at Grenville Secondary School. I have worked across sectors, if you want to call it that. So moving away from education just a bit, because I'm going to go back into there. I've done quite a bit of work with the Ministry of Youth across the years. I've facilitated Youth Parliament, National Youth Parliament. I've facilitated building groups across the country, group dynamics. I've done quite a lot with the youth department, including writing policies for the youth in Grenada. And then I went on to study and became a lecturer at SGU. So I am now in the public health department. I'm the accreditation coordinator there, where I basically function as a total quality manager for the MPH program. And I'm also lecturing in public health. So I do have quite a bit of experience. I have not shared everything, including that I'm a senator and so on.
And I'm happy that we've gotten that out there. Because many persons, they may probably look at you and they start going, okay, is she a Johnny come lately? What is it that she have to offer to politics? Well, with all of that, Joe, politics is about service, and I'm assuming that you would agree. And we're all looking for agents of change, not just people entering the political fray, but persons that are committed to becoming change agents in our way of life. Can I assume reasonably that that's why you're here? And talk to me about your plans.
So you can definitely, well, let me not say assume. I would confirm that I am indeed a change agent, not just at the national level, but also in the different atmospheres, in the different spaces where I function. Again, it comes back to my experience, my knowledge of performance management. That's where my master's is. I have a master's degree in human resource development and performance management. And I also submitted and successfully defended my thesis in education, higher education, that is. So becoming a change agent, this has been a process across my lifespan thus far. I have basically worked with young people, getting them to think more along the lines of development, national development, not just personal development, but how can the skills and abilities that these young people have contribute to moving our nation forward. I have mentored young people. I have, worked quite a bit with young men across communities. And I'm now a gender champion for the Commonwealth Parliamentary Association. So I am also continuing to work as a change agent in that field, getting women involved not just in politics, but in different areas of life. So the change agent aspect of my life has started a long time ago. It's just continuing now into the political atmosphere, where I am hoping that I can be an inspiration to young women out there who still are a bit tentative of getting into politics, knowing what comes with being involved. I am standing here to inspire young people to be change agents in that area as well.
What comes with being involved in politics? Tell me.
So your life basically becomes an open book. And not that I have any problems with that, because personally I have no secrets to hide. But then it also comes with quite a bit of mudslinging and name calling, and to the point sometimes it comes where persons may come very close to defaming other persons. And you have to be prepared for that if you're going to get into the political space, into the political atmosphere, into this realm. While I do not necessarily subscribe to such behaviors, it is what comes with it. And so persons must be prepared for that.
So I'm assuming reasonably, having established your position, that you're quite ready, if the need be, to go down into the trenches and do what you have to do?
I will go down into the trenches, Joseph, but here is the thing. I have a certain standard that I will not compromise. So while I will go down to meet with the people, to have the discussions, to interact, to engage, I will not engage in certain behaviors that I'm seeing happening in the political realm. I don't think it augurs well for the narrative, the conversations that we need to be having on the issues that we need to be having. I think we need to stay focused on what is important to not just the party, but also to the country.
Do you get a sense very often that politicians, they use that sort of, they enter that fray as a smokescreen for not wanting to deal with the hardcore issues that are affecting people, so they thrive more on the sensationalism than the hardcore realities?
I would not want to make any castigations against any politician because I do not know the space, the mental space in which they're functioning.
But you're not knowing the mental space, but you see and you can analyze what is it that they're doing and not doing.
Right. So let me speak to what they're not doing, because I'm not seeing many of the politicians coming out and chastising supporters, for example, of the behaviors that we're seeing, which is really bullying when we come on Facebook and persons have different opinions or perspectives on an issue. I am not seeing many politicians coming out and saying, you know what, supporters, we should not be doing that. Let's stay focused. Let's focus on the issues and not go down into the drain or gutter politics, as we would call it.
Not go down into the gutter politics. Do you think that we have a problem when it comes to that culture? Are we there? And if we are there, is it possible that we can move away from the gutter politics as you coined it?
I think in some areas we are there, and I am very cognizant that you cannot control what adults do. Everybody has their own way of doing things, saying things, behaving. But I do believe that we can move away from it. It's a mindset, and mindsets are difficult to change. But if we are going to be change agents, to use the phrase that you used earlier, then we must start somewhere. And to me, starting is by making a statement that this is not acceptable. This does not augur well. This does not do anything for national politics or nation building.
As a champion for women and educator, you've lived almost most of your life in the sphere of service. What are you hearing on the ground, Miss Sincere, from young people, women, the challenges that they face? What are they?
So let me start with young people, because I have a passion for young people. So I would have spoken to a number of them. Again, across the years, as I told you, I've been engaging with young people. And one of the clarion calls that they have is unemployment and underemployment, sustainable employment, right? And this continues to be a theme even in the upcoming election, moving into the upcoming election. Young people are saying, we go to school, we come, out secondary schools, we have so many subjects, we go to college, we go to university, but then we're not getting jobs that are commensurate with our qualifications. In fact, we're asked for experience that we do not have. Experience, in my opinion, that is impossible when we have such a young population. Right? So it's basically a barrier for them, and they're very vocal about it. I'm also getting a sense that some of the programs that are being presented to them, provided to them, while they acknowledge the importance, they appreciate the provision of those. I had a conversation with a young man who said something very profound to me, that we're getting what we want, but not what we need. And that was a very, very profound statement for me. So I asked him, what we need. And he went back to the same thing. Employment, real engagement, not superficial engagement, real engagement, involvement in nation building, involvement in the politics of the land, freedom of speech, and so on. And he had a really interesting conversation with me on the matter.
We've heard the conversation in the past at Tessa the revamping of the education system. And you get the sense that we are long overdue in terms of, I for one have always been of the impression, the school of thought, that our education system is more geared towards academia. And judge the whole concept of just regurgitating information, but not necessarily teaching individuals principles that allows them to translate that which they've learned into being productive citizens. As an educator, is that a concern for you? And if so, how do you see yourself being a champion of that agent of change in that regard?
Okay, so can I just respond? Because I responded to the aspect of the youth, but I did not respond to the issues that women would have spoken about. Yeah, so we still have those issues, gender-based violence, equity in remuneration, work hours, the work-life balance, and so on. So those are some issues as well that women have brought forward. As it relates to the revamping of the education system, Joseph, I have always advocated for that, always. While persons would see me as someone in academia, and that is important, going out, getting a subject, getting a degree, I think we have made it so academic that we are not focusing on degrees in non-traditional areas where young people, where people in general can be successfully employed. We tend to focus on the traditional areas, lawyers, doctors, teachers, engineers. But there is nothing wrong, for example, in being an influencer. My daughter, for instance, is an influencer, a social media influencer, and she makes her money by, and she's happy to tell me that, Mommy, while y'all are going out there and working from 8 to 4 or 9 to 5, I am working with flexible hours and making maybe as much money and more than what y'all are doing. So we do have to get our education system in line. I think there is a mismatch, and I have been trying to follow all of what is happening in education. What is the vision of education? Where is the gap in our education as it relates to the workforce? And the scholarships that we're giving, how are they closing that gap, right? We know that we live in a technological era. Where is education on coding and those sorts of things? So I see a serious revamping of the education system as being necessary if we're to move forward.
We're keeping our eyes on the clock. 19 minutes gone past the hour in the morning time. My guest is NDC's candidate and representative for St. Andrews Northeast, Ms. Tessa Sincere. And again, I want to say thanks to each and every one of you that is part of that conversation. Let's just shift from the broader conversation and go closer to home, Tessa. St. Andrews Northeast. What, in your estimation, are some of the more immediate and pressing needs of the constituents there?
So there is a cross-cutting need across the country, right? That's need of being sustainably employed. It's no different in Northeast. Yeah, many persons will speak to you and tell you that this is a serious problem, and not just not being employed, because we have quite a number of unemployed people, but underemployed. Again, with degrees, with education, that cannot find jobs that match the skills and knowledge that they have. So they're pushed either to take a job in construction or one of those areas. And I'm not saying that that's not an important job. I'm just saying that these persons would have gone out and, studied a particular area, but can't find a job in the area that they studied. Another one is the whole community building, community involvement. There is a serious lack of functioning groups in the communities. And we all know that groups play a really important role in alleviating negative behaviors in our communities. I cannot say there are many functioning groups in St. Andrew Northeast. I am a member of one. I was invited to join one when I came to Liverpool. So I joined, and we have been meeting and trying very hard to get things flowing. There are a couple others that I know of, but that community spirit that will involve, persons getting active and engaging in community-based activities, that's seriously lacking. Seriously lacking.
I know sports, the area of sports is also an area that is close to your heart.
Yes, definitely. And I will tell you why. I grew up in a sporting family. My brothers played football and basketball for what was then Trench Town. My husband is actually the president of the Grenada Basketball Association. And my son plays football for Paradise FC. So the sports is in there. It's in the family. I myself have not played a sport. I will be honest with you. I've never played a sport, but I've always supported. And so that support has continued in my current function in the community. I support whatever activities the young men, or the young women ask me to support, or I would make suggestions and we get things rolling. So yes, sports is definitely an important area for me.
Anything projects that is specific to you that you've seen as being priority areas for you?
Are you speaking across the different sectors or particularly to sports?
Particularly to sports in your constituency.
Okay, so particularly to sports in my constituency, let's start at La Poultry. Now, La Poultry has what I consider to be a really, really good playing field. Yes, work has started on La Poultry for a long while. It has just been dormant, I would call it that. Work started but did not continue. And so that's an important project for me, for Northeast. The pavilion is there, it's not covered, the seats are not installed as yet, and there is no lighting at La Poultry playing field. And I would share with you here that I attended Tivoli RC School Sports, which took place at the La Poultry playing field. Mm-hmm. Really well organized, fun activity. Parents were out, all community people were out, but then it ran a bit late. And so what persons had to do was actually put their phone lights on so the children could run in that sports. And that was just so unfortunate for me, because not only could they have gotten injured running, in that kind of lighting, but also that, persons would have, left because of the lighting issue. And to me, that's really a very simple fix if we prioritize it.
So is it a case where you think that previous administrations have not given much depth and consideration to the realities? We talk sports, but we don't really commit ourselves to it?
In many instances, I seriously believe that, and I make no apologies for that. I will also share an example with you. I live in Pearls, as I said. The pasture is right outside my doors. When I open my door, that's what I look into. And again, the pasture isn't lit, but Pearls is one of the best, if not the best, cricket field in Grenada, but it's not lit. And then there is a basketball court that I think is underutilized. I know there are some issues, haven't spoken to my husband about it. There are some issues with that court. And then, just the general area of the playing field needs a bit of upgrading. There are no seats, there is no lighting. The court has lighting, no lighting in the pasture and so on. And this is a field that is used very, very often.
26 minutes, that is, after the hour of 9 o'clock, to the point for today, the 26th day of April. I have to take a commercial break, but let me ask you, though, we continue to hear the conversation across different spectrums about the need to put our people back to work. We always hear the conversation of comparing the period from the 80s, the 70s into 80s, when Grenada was productive. Agro-processing was an high element of our culture, who we were as a people. Sad to say that it has gone questionably in a different direction. What are your plans, if elected, in terms of restoring and reinvigorating our agro-processing sector?
Thank you for that question, and I love that question. I love that question because I grew up, with my parents planting. I grew up with going in the garden. I grew up with people who farmed quite extensively. Okay. And so I observe. I tend to spend quite a bit of time observing. And St. Andrew North is a farming community. But every single year, we see loads and loads of fruits and vegetables spoiling. We see that we export our fruits to neighboring islands and buy them back in a different form. And so I am saying to us as a nation, why is it so hard for us to, create some agro-processing plants? And one of the plans that we have for St. Andrew North is to do that, to implement an agro-processing plant at the Simon Industrial Park.
Introduce it. Is that introduction, is that in theory and concept, or is it something that you see as being practical? Because very often that's the challenge that many of the electorates that they face. Somebody vying for office, they throw me a fancy speech, but when you look, they sound like an idealist. But is it realistic? Is it realistic, Tessa, that can be done?
It is definitely realistic. I mean, we already have areas in that industrial park where things are being produced. I am saying let's expand it. It's not impossible. I am saying if it's our priority, I'm sure we can get funding, grants, and so on to improve that, to expand that facility and make it a really good manufacturing hub.
Making Northeast the center for a new dynamics for Grenada. Tessa Sensei, and this is candidate for St. Andrews Northeast. We take a quick commercial break, Grenada. When we come back, we open the telephone lines and we start engaging you on social media, right here on To The Point. We'll be right back.
Mention the wing high, then you have things like man, you must come back, We have the low power there.
It is kind of like the same man, and it's just different name for the same kind of thing.
And last but not least, I just want to say to all the men who saw me, call me, and ask for a piece of cake. I'm baking this weekend.
Join us Fridays at 8 on GBN Television, K105 FM, GBN's Facebook page, and YouTube channel for We Culture.
The most anticipated family fun-filled event on the GBN calendar is back. The Maggie King of the Grill. Join us on June 4th at Montrouge. Be part of the culinary masterpiece as the best grillers on island compete for the coveted title of the Maggie King of the Grill. Think you have what it takes? Be part of the action. June 4th. Book your spot. If not, step away from the grill. If you can't handle the heat. 29 minutes on to the hour of 10 o'clock. Welcome back to The Point for today, the 26th day of the month of April. In case you're just joining us, my guest this morning is NDC's candidate for St. Andrews Northeast, Tessa Sensei. Tessa, youth unemployment, agro-processing, the need to revamp our education system as some of the areas that you see as priority. But we have a caller that is on the line. We go to the telephone, we go to the lines. Good morning, caller.
Yes, good morning, Mr. Cadore. Greetings and greetings to your guest. Listen, is your guest there presentially with you, or
No, she's there. She's with me virtually.
Can you give me the guarantee that she can hear me?
Can you
hear me?
Yes, she's not in the affirmative that she can hear you.
Very well. Let's go. Listen, this here country over the years, I know that many of us have taken a serious fear of the word ideology. Clearly because we don't understand it, and based on some of our historical memories where certain people went overboard with the schisms, not understanding the limits. But don't be afraid of the word. Don't be afraid of the word. I choose not to use the paradigm of schisms this time, but on the political front, there are certain stages, levels, left, right, center, left of center, right of center. Can you just tell me where she falls based on her philosophical beliefs? That's my first question. The second question is this. Can you just tell me, as a senator in the so-called parliament of this here country, if she knows of the existence of a Constitution Act and an Independence Act on Grenada, if she knows, can she tell me where I can find a copy of each one of these documents? Trust that my questions have been clear.
Thank you.
And I thank you very much, Mr. Cadore.
Thank you very much, caller. Ms. Sincere?
Thank you very much for that question. As it relates to my philosophical beliefs, my general disposition in relation to that is that we should all be able to make it in Grenada. That is my overarching belief, that our country must be in such a situation that regardless of which strata of the society we fall, we should all be able to be productive, successful citizens. As it relates to the acts, I have heard of them. I have not researched them myself, so I would not be able to directly point the caller into a particular direction. But of course, there is always the clerk of Parliament who would be able to give further information on that. I have not seen them myself.
Thank you very much. 425-2041, that is the number to get in on the inside. Reminder you can also submit your questions, query, or concerns to our Facebook, our WhatsApp portal, which is the same as our in-studio number, 425-2041. Let's go back a bit, though, Tessa, to your commitment, and it's part of who you are, the conversation, your fight for equality. Some individuals have a difficulty in, given the fact that we are traditionally a Christian society, when they hear the fight for women's rights and women's lib, they seem to think that it means the women are going to take over the world and men are going to get left behind and lost in a quandary. Your thoughts on that?
I do not subscribe to that belief at all. That, because women are given opportunities to develop themselves, to promote themselves, that we are going to leave men behind. In fact, even as a gender champion, when I was initiated as a gender champion, that was one of the statements that I made. While I'm a gender champion and there is focus on women's issues, I believe men also need to be brought into the discussion. So I also fight for men's issues. And I'm passionate about men's health, for example. Men tend to think, and this is again a mindset, a societal trend that we've seen across the years, that men are strong and they should not cry and they should not, get counseling and they should not. I am totally against that. In fact, I'm very much for men expressing themselves when it comes to that. I'm pushing for men's health. Go check. I had a conversation with a gentleman and he said, I wasn't feeling well. And I said, why don't you go to the doctor? No, man, I'll feel better in a little bit. I said, that is why we women will always outlive you guys, because you always have to put up this macho front that you don't need to go to see the doctor. But as soon as something happens to a lady, we go to get checked up. We go to, see what is going on with us. So I do not subscribe to that belief. Again, Joseph, across the years, over the years, women's issues have been left unaddressed largely. It is now coming heavily into the forefront. Women would be confined to certain jobs, women would be confined to certain remuneration packages, women would be restricted to involvement. I saw an old teaching code for women who could not teach if they were not married. If they were unmarried, they had to be dressed a certain way and all of those things. So I believe that both are important, focusing on the women and focusing on the men. It just so happens that I'm a gender champion that focuses heavily on women, but that does not mean that men's issues need to be left alone.
Do you get the sense, though, given that we're a highly traditional society, that this modern trust has forced us into a direction where we have to be repositioned to surrender some of our more traditional views on life in terms of the role of both men, women, children, how society evolves on a whole?
I do not like the word surrender necessarily, because it sounds as if we're at war and we're not really at war. Society is evolving, and as society evolves, we need to evolve as well. Our thinking needs to be evolving. We cannot stay stagnant. Change is the only constant that we have. So as things change, so we need to change, and not just our actions, which at times may appear superficial, but our mindset, a deeper thinking or reflections as to what is important in life and how we can transform our country.
transformation is a process. Change, they say, that is also constant as well. We live, Tessa, in a society where 60% of our population is relatively young, for young people under the age of within this 25 to 35 age group. For you as a woman, as an educator, and a person in academia, you highlighted the challenge that is of young people. They're going out, playing their part, which you were told, get educated. But we also talk about changing the landscape of education. In terms of juxtapositioning the board, the fact that we have to reposition our society and allow our young people to become more empowered. There's just digital conversation that's being had. Put into perspective your thoughts as to how really and truly and what can be done and should be done to really and truly get our young people to have a more active say in nation building.
Okay, so let's take the employment part of it, right, and the education part of it. I think I touched on that a bit.
But hold on, before you get into it, Tessa, there's a caller on the line, so let's engage the caller. Good morning, caller.
Yes, Mr. Cadore, I beg your indulgences for a minute.
Yes, go ahead.
Yes, I must indeed say I tried to be as sincere in my questions with Miss Saint Say, but I'm totally disappointed in the answers, but we're not delving into that now. I want to ask one other favor. Should I say favor? Now, Ms. Saint Say, as a senator, I challenge you on this one. Section 32, subsection 3 of the Constitution, the so-called Constitution of Grenada, stipulates clearly, that the ballot shall be conducted in a manner never to disclose who another person votes for. Nevertheless, in section 67, subsection 4 of the Representation of the People Act, it says that people like me, visually impaired, have to go into the polling booth with, quote-unquote, a friend. I understand that to mean a person of confidence. The second, the Representation of the People's Act, what is it? To me, my logical and linguistic understanding contravenes the first, the Constitution. I'm leaving it with you, therefore, to look into this matter as a senator of this country, to have this anomaly corrected as soon as possible, because, in effect, the rights of the people with disabilities, namely the visually impaired, are being violated by the Representation of the People's Act. My view. I leave it to you to a comment, and that you would research this matter and have this anomaly corrected ASAP. Thank you very much and have a nice day. Will you?
Thank you very much, caller. Ms. Sincere?
Let me thank the caller for that question, because this is something I literally discussed yesterday, last night to be precise. We were having that conversation, and I am totally with the caller on this one. I believe it is an infringement of persons' rights, even though provisions are made for them to come into the polling booth with somebody. I believe we live in an era now where a visually impaired person or any impaired person should be able to cast their votes for themselves. We have a system that can be used. There is Braille, there is, just to use the most simplest of them. I do not see why somebody, and this is an issue that came up before, I do not see why putting myself in that situation, I should be comfortable going into a polling booth with somebody who would cast a vote on my behalf. I am still not sure that the person is putting that X where I want them to put it, as opposed to if the ballot paper had a Braille on it and I can actually vote for myself. So I'm totally with the caller on this.
Thank you. So we can go back to you were about to give a response to my previous question in terms of our young people. How do we address those challenges? Yes.
Right, the education and digitalization. Mm-hmm. Again, we have to start looking at non-traditional areas. We already have areas that have, more than enough persons. So we need, again, to look at our markets, our local markets, our regional markets, and our international markets, if we're going to make any change. I know our education system says that we're prepared to send out students that are fit to live and to be lived with. That's what it aims to do, right? To turn out persons who are fit to live and fit to be lived with. But how can you live when you're educated in an area where there is already a real challenge as in terms of numbers of persons studying the same area? So our education system definitely needs to address that. But that must be done in relation to our local market. First of all, what do we need in Grenada? And if we do not take some serious reflection on that, then we will continue to be turning our students who would not be gainfully employed, who would be underemployed. We also need to know what are the skill sets, knowledge sets that our region needs, for example. So we're not just turning out persons, because there is no way one single country would be able to take all of the persons who are coming out of school. In Grenada alone, it's a challenge. So we need to be able to address the gaps in the region as well. So they would be, gainfully employed outside of Grenada potentially and internationally. So it goes back again to our priorities. Where are our priorities? What are we doing? Is there a systematic way? I've heard over and over and over ministers of government saying to us that implementation is an issue. So why are we not focusing on getting the implementation right? So we can have all of these nice things on paper, I agree, but how are we going to go forward and implement them? So we need to take some time, serious time. I think most of the times we tend to put a plaster on a sore instead of dealing with why the sore is actually there. So we have a root cause issue that we need to deal with.
15 minutes on to the hour, we go back to the telephone lines. Good morning, caller. You're alive.
Good morning, Joe, and good morning to our dear sister Tessa, sincere. As a woman from St. Andrews, Big Parish, I just want to say I salute you and I say congratulations for choosing to be on the political platform. We welcome every effort. We know you would do well. And we continue to support you, and God bless you and your family. Welcome again. Thank you for choosing the NDC. God bless you.
Thank you very much, caller. 14 minutes. 14 minutes on to the hour. It is to the point. Let's just take a look. Since that's what's happening on the international front, because we cannot in any way close a blind eye. Put a blind eye to it. The war in Ukraine. We've had this spiraling issues. We come off the heels of COVID and we think we get in there. Then comes the war in Ukraine, increasing oil prices, and we know the relationship. And we continue to see the cost of living. We're not going to argue, spiral upwards. I'm not sure if it's going out of control as yet, but it keeps going upwards. The conversation is basic food items are going up, but yet salaries have remained, unfortunately, stagnated for the greater part of the last 10 years. As a woman, as a mother, how much of a concern is that for you in terms of the fact that, listen, people out there are saying, we catching we nenen in local parlance?
That is definitely a concern for me. So these external shocks that we have really no control over, we must find ways or have ways. What I see us being, Joseph, is that we are very reactive. Yes, and to some extent that is okay. But I would prefer if we be a bit more proactive. Again, we're going back, and it's not, we tend to take this into a tourism versus agriculture discussion, and it's not that. If we have our agro-processing sector functioning really well, there are lots of things that we can alleviate. Some items that we're getting from overseas, we can actually find alternatives for them locally. And we understand that gas price is going up. We do not have oil and gas, even though pronouncements were made to that effect. We have not seen that come on as yet. And I'm saying as yet, very optimistically. So we have to function in that space where we're importing items, and once the cost of oil and gas goes up, naturally a lot of the food items will go up. So what can we control? What can we do locally? We need to start focusing a lot more on what we have here. I grew up eating, for example, corn flour, or cornmeal. I grew up eating, carrots from our garden, right? Not necessarily the imported carrots. I grew up eating fruits and vegetables. I grew up eating breadfruit, roast breadfruit. But you hear about roast breadfruit only when it's time to have a traditional breakfast or an oil down and so on. And I saw there are some young people who are engaged in making breadfruit flour, for example, as an alternative. But do we have the capacity to do that? That is why part of the focus, a strong focus, should be on agro-processing, because we have breadfruit spoiling. So yes, the cost of living is going up, and we cannot argue that. It's a fact. And yes, salaries have been stagnant for a while. So how do families manage? We have to go back to what my mother used to call eating local. Eating what we have, growing, doing our backyard gardening as much as possible. I grew up with my mother having a chicken. We used to call it a coop at that time, and she would have her layers or her broilers. You sell the eggs and then you kill the layers and you sell that, or you give to the neighbors and so on. So we have to go back to that. We definitely have to focus on what we can control, what we have control over locally, because those external shocks are not going to stop coming.
12 minutes onto the hour, we have a caller online. Good morning, caller. You're alive.
Good morning.
Yes, go ahead.
Yes. Boys were failing academically in the 70s. Presently today, boys are failing academically. I would like to know, I don't know, if someone from the Ministry of Education can explain if there are more dropouts with boys or with girls, dropout out from school, I mean. And I would like to ask the young lady, I think she's a doctor. I would like to know which specialty, which area she's specialized in. Thank you very much.
Lady Cynthia, a twofold question for you. I'm not sure if the former part of it you're able to respond in terms of what's happening at the ministry level, but you can share your thoughts though.
Okay, so let me answer the last question first. My doctorate is actually in higher education, so it speaks to the whole issue of globalization, commercialization of education, and those sorts of topics. But having been a teacher, I am a modern language teacher. I have expertise in that as well. And I'm currently teaching public health at St. George's University. So I hope that answers the question that the caller had. As it relates to the former question, I would not want to go into that because, as you correctly said, I think officials from the Ministry of Education would be well placed to respond to that, but I can give my observation on what I've been seeing, right? Across the years, yes, boys have been dropping out of schools. Boys have been performing poorly as opposed to girls. In fact, I kept saying, over the years, we had Dr. Didicus Jules come and we spoke to boys being at risk. And we had these nice conversations and we had all these plans and we had all these ideas. But none of that really translated into some serious action as it relates to boys in schools. And I have a serious problem with that. So my disposition when it comes to boys skulking school, I would call upon them. I would say, why are you not in school? I would reach out to them and say, you need to go to school. Why aren't you in school? As it relates to girls, we have seen, and that is from the information that I have, a rise in teenage pregnancy in this post-COVID era. So we will have an issue again with, girls and boys attendance to school. But let's speak to the issue of underperformance in key areas such as mathematics and English. And I also have a challenge in understanding why this is still the case when we had people trained in math or English for implementation at the primary level. If we do not get it right at the primary level, then it translates into the secondary level. So what we're seeing at CPA with poor performances in math and English, if we look at it in CXC, we're seeing a similar trend. So we need to focus on, the feeder schools, get it right at the lower level, and then we should see some input, some inroads into the other areas. If you cannot read, if you cannot understand the questions, then there is no way you could sit exams and pass. Then simple computation. I see persons having problems with simple computation. So it means that the concepts need to be concretized at a lower level so it becomes easier at the secondary level.
Can we then reasonably conclude that our education system, which is supposed to be one of our pillars of support for development, it has failed us then? Is it reasonable to draw that conclusion?
Again, I would say to some extent, and I would say that with no apologies whatsoever, I am not, even though I have gone through the system and I've gone through standardized tests and I've gone through all of that, I am not a strong supporter of standardized tests, especially at the lower level. Because I'm thinking, why would you need to do a regional standardized test at the secondary, at the primary level in your country, when we had a system that was addressing it locally? To me, that was more important, getting it right locally. Yes, there is a curriculum. Yes, we're aware of what the regional atmosphere is like in terms of education, but we were focusing or are focusing too much on getting students to pass a test as opposed to understanding the concepts and using them, application of the knowledge that they have. I think at the secondary level, we can start getting into that, So yes, to a certain extent, it is failing us.
We're running out of time, though. Let me just throw this one at you, though. There's also been a conversation, continues to be the conversation, graduation at one time. Some have argued that our education system seemed to be more geared at making poor people become poorer, where you just go through this ever revolving door where you're forced to commit to things, and then nobody is not necessarily result oriented, where we can measure after a 10-year period X, Y, and Z. Somebody commented, and they had a concern with the whole concept of, they were making mention of a preschooler graduating. So you graduate at preschool level, you graduate from primary school, you graduate from secondary school, and they're saying years ago, when the highlight of a young person was at least to graduate from secondary school. But they're saying now that the system has become so overly commercialized that it forces people into a sense of more underachievers, in that they become they focus more on mediocrity. In that no longer are they driven to go to school, that I'm going to graduate at secondary school, because when I get to secondary school, I've graduated about 4 times already. So the traditional viewers, the traditionalists, they are saying, listen, the old system is not making sense. The modern ones are saying, the women, because now it's a new dispensation for them, they're saying, let me go and achieve more. So there's a convergence of these two systems that some are saying, listen, that's what's adding to our problem. As an educator, do you agree with that? That we need to education should be some less commercialized, about money. A child has to graduate from school, and even to leave school, he has to go and fork out hundreds of dollars just to leave school.
Again, I'm sort of a non-traditionalist when it comes to educational issues, so I'm not one that would push for graduation at a primary school, a pre-primary school, or a primary school. I understand it at a secondary school, maybe at college, but definitely not at a preschool. I think we're missing what is important. What is important is for the students to learn, and to learn well, to be able to apply the learning. But we seem to be focusing on moving on to the next step, even though the students have not gotten what they need to get at a particular level. And I will share an experience with you, Joseph. When I was teaching at the secondary school where I was, we would literally see parents at orientation and never see them again until graduation. And I had a serious problem with that because education is a process and we need all stakeholders involved. So yes, this whole idea of graduation and my child is graduating and we see confusion and conflicts as to who gets which award and who didn't get which award and so on. And I had a serious conversation with a parent whose child was doing really well but did not get an award. And I said to her, listen, I understand how you're feeling, but let's focus on what is important. Your child did well. Now let's get her into the next level and see how she does. This should be the focus, not that she has graduated from preschool, from primary school, from secondary school, and then so we seem to be in this realm of perpetual graduation. The focus is on graduation. And I understand. I mean, you're proud of your children. They've, finished one level and they're moving into another level. But concentrate on what is important. Education is a very, very strong factor, as you say, in nation building. Personal development, professional development, community development, national development. And if we do not get it right, then we will always be trying to backpedal. So we have to get it right. What is important? Is it graduation or is it that the students have the concepts and can apply them effectively?
Is it graduation the focus or getting them to understand the concepts and how they apply? This is where we leave the conversation for now, Grenada. I want to say thanks to my guests for the last hour, NDC's candidate for St. Andrews Northeast, Tessa Sincere. Indeed, it was a pleasure being here with you. Thanks for being part of the conversation here on To The Point.
Thank you for having me. Blessings on everyone. Have an enjoyable rest of the week.
Grenada, this is where I leave you for now. It's exactly 10 o'clock. We're 5 minutes or beyond schedule. I'm going to continue with you in the mid-morning. Later on in the morning, we're going to have some more wonderful friends from inside of the Communal Cooperative Credit Union. And certainly the conversation is going to continue right here. Have yourself a really great day. Continue to do what you do best. Live life, love life. Treat this day as is your last day. And go out there and try to find your divine purpose and your role for being here on planet Earth, on this little piece of rock that is called Grenada. So long, everybody. JC loves you. Have a great one.